January 4, 2022. Happy New Year, everybody. It is our meeting of Kingston Planning Board for this night. We have public hearings for warrant articles tonight. That's our topic for the evening. And our start time is 6:43 p.m. Sorry for the delay. Okay. So we have some items that at our last meeting we voted to move several items to warrant, but we have a couple of others to discuss and hold public hearings on, and we also have two citizens petitions which we will do after we've done the ones that we're working on. So those are, and if I'm, so Glenn, on the one that you passed out to us saying warrant articles for Tuesday, that's the sheet I should be referring to for?
That is correct.
Okay, so on the Aquifer Protection Ordinance, oh, and it's not giving me,
You should see.
well, it says structure, refer to article, preamble, Roman numeral 2 definitions, but it doesn't give me the what is the number for Aquifer Protection Ordinance? I just want to do that as a reference. Article
20, oh, I want to say 204, but it could be 206. So I guess I really
well, 206 is ADU.
So aquifer is 201.
201. All right. So Article 201, we're proposing under definition of structure to refer to Article Preamble 2 definitions.
Correct.
For structure, presumably.
That's correct.
Okay. And Glenn, just for clarity, would you like to read us that definition of structure?
The one that is found in the preamble?
Yes, the one that we're now going to refer people to if they're looking in the Aquifer Protection District.
Yes. That definition says, structure, : anything constructed, the use of which requires permanent location on or in the ground, or attachment to something having permanent location on or in the ground, including stationary and portable carports, swimming pools, tool sheds, garages, greenhouses, and other accessory storage buildings, period.
And we're doing this because there currently isn't a definition of structure in Aquifer?
I can check that. I think we're doing it so that we have a consistent.
Yeah, we're making it the same as the other.
Well, yes, but this doesn't tell me that we're taking anything out.
Yes, that we are replacing the present structure definition in the Aquifer Protection District, which is at 202-2, the second page, and structure. And that is shorter and less inclusive than the one in the preamble.
Okay, so
we will have a consistent definition of structure throughout the ordinances.
Okay, all right. So we're replacing, then technically we're replacing the current definition of structure in the Aquifer Protection District, Article 201, with the one that currently appears in the preamble 2 definitions.
Correct. And if you remember, at our last meeting, we did a similar change so that the definition for structure in Commercial Zone 3, I believe, now reads the exact same.
Yes.
Because it had a slightly different definition, and that caused us problems with certain developments. So we wanted to get them to be all the same definition instead of conflicting ones.
Okay. All right. So Glenn, is there anything else you need to brief us on with regard to that?
I don't think so.
All right. Any questions from the board on this one? And just for the record, there is no public, so otherwise I would ask for public comment because this is a public hearing, but we don't have any public.
Adam, chime in.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm sure he will if he feels the need
Also
to.
moved.
Oh, and which reminds me, before we go any further, I forgot to just go through the list of who's here so that when Ellen transcribes these minutes, she'll know. Peter Coffin, board member. Richard Wilson, Selectmen's rep. Glenn Koppelman here. Chris Bashaw, board member. Robin Duguay, board member, and Glenn Greenwood, town planner. Okay, so what we need for this one is a motion to, if
Actually,
you're,
what we need on this is a motion just to put this wording forward for January 18th. Because although we posted it in time, we didn't have time to put it in the newspaper to make the 12-day clear period. So it did get into the newspaper, but the publishing date really only put it like a week in advance, not the full 10 days. So you're really only continuing this to January 18th to actually send it to town meeting.
okay.
So moved. Yeah, I'll second that.
All right, so motion by Robin to move, to continue the discussion on this one to January 18. Second by Peter Coffin. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? And that's unanimous.
Perfect.
Okay. Is that going to be the case with all of these, Glenn?
No, just that one.
Just that one,
That
okay.
was the only one. Because we added it in as a trailing thought at the last public hearing.
Oh, right.
What about the ADU one? The
Oh, the ADU one was a
We just
lot.
did that last meeting, so
Yeah.
it has to be moved forward.
I think she had already posted that one.
Okay,
Because we had already,
Okay.
we maybe didn't have the exact language, but posting it said the exact language would be available in the town office, and by the time we did all that, the 10 days was clear.
Okay. So the next one, if we follow through on our agenda here, requirements for multifamily dwellings and development in the C1 commercial zone. And that one is on the second page of your handout, Glenn.
it's the one with the red writing. Yeah,
Number 4,
yeah.
number of dwelling units, multifamily.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the agenda, and I did.
Actually, it's on the bottom of the first page. There's 2 number 4s and 5s.
Yeah, it starts on the first page,
Oh,
because it actually is going in as a complete,
It's
very
number
well.
3.
subsection, so it covers the things that are talked about under number 3, number 5, number 4, and number 5. So all of those changes actually happen in the same paragraph of the zoning ordinance.
But on the second page where we've got red type, those are the things we're dealing with.
Correct.
All right.
Yes, and not 3.
So this is in commercial zone C1. And for number of dwelling units, a multifamily, and then the proposed change is here in quotes in red.
Correct.
Structure shall not have more than 24 dwelling units.
That
So-
was the changed language.
So that would be additional language to the multifamily section of commercial zone C1.
Correct.
Is it just addition or did it change it, wasn't it?
We
Changed it.
Changed it from 8,
Yeah.
it's asking to change it from 8 to 24.
Yes, it expands the density, actually.
Right. Glenn, did you have any commentary on that, or?
No, we had discussed it. The attempts at the amendments to this particular part of the zoning ordinance is that we've had this in place for about 8 years and absolutely nothing has happened except for one design review that was so hindered by the ordinance that they really couldn't develop it in a way that was meaningful. So
Right.
they didn't.
And having number 5, the density of a multifamily development shall not be greater than 4 bedrooms, ...
Because the remainder of the language doesn't change
Change.
from what is in the ordinance.
Ordinance, okay, so
What was it?
Previously, it said
What would we
4
change it
or
from?
6.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct, and we're making it clear that the or 6 has been eliminated,
Ah.
and it's just 4.
Yeah.
So are these being voted on as one thing together?
Yes, to move forward, because there's,
I would hope that they are, because if they don't, if it doesn't go in as one, it would be
we have a
a
mixed
particular
bag.
kind of show if some people voted no on some and some people voted yes on the other. So all of these will go in as one warrant article,
So-
amending the multifamily ordinance in C1.
We
For,
voted on this last time, right?
We voted on the first two.
We had crossed off 4, 6 meetings.
I thought we did, but I don't remember.
We definitely discussed it, but it still had to come to a
It
public
had,
hearing.
exactly.
We
For
still have to
that meeting,
rewrite it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
for that meeting, it was still something to be discussed by the board, whether we would go with the 4 or the 6.
so we're dealing with 4, 5, and 6 on the second page.
Correct,
Right.
All right.
correct.
And so, structure shall not have more than 24 dwelling units, and then the density of a multifamily development shall not be greater than 4 bedrooms.
And then there's
Explain that to
continuing
me.
language. If you want me to read
Because
the,
it's, yeah, I know, it's confusing, because
but
what
yeah,
counts,
if
what
you want me to
comes.
read the continuing language, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, just for our edification there, in the public, because it doesn't, it sounds like you can't have more than 4 bedrooms in a home.
Yeah,
development,
no, yeah, that's, I understand. I just have to find it.
And once again, the article and section are not listed on this, so I don't have my book with me, so.
So it's number 5 in density, and it's actually on page 108-3, if you have your zoning ordinance and you wanted to look at it. And that paragraph starts, as boldface density, and it says the density of a multifamily development shall not be greater than, we've said, 4 bedrooms. And then it goes on and it would read, per contiguous upland acre located in Kingston. That's the language that would follow.
Okay. That's the critical.
So explain that to me. I guess I'm not following it, that it says shall not be greater than 4 bedrooms. So what's it talking about? Can't be more than 4.
Per developable acre.
Oh,
Which-
per acre.
Correct, correct.
I don't see
So
the
that's
per
a
acre.
density requirement.
Okay,
And then
okay.
the other speaks to how those bedrooms, once you have the number
Gotcha.
of
All
bedrooms.
right, I understand it now. I didn't,
It was-
the per acre is not on there.
Exactly,
Okay,
exactly. That's
well,
the dot, because then the.
understand it now.
Doesn't change.
That will not appear on the ballot that way, presumably.
No, what we will have on the ballot is the entire segment with the bolded changes,
Okay.
so that people can see what the actual changed
Yeah,
language is.
because without
in-
that
in
context,
line.
without that context, you don't know what the hell's
They would
going
have no
on.
idea. Correct.
Except we get the small version of everything, so we gotta be careful.
Yeah.
Well, it's a small version, but hopefully enough of it that it makes sense.
It actually all happens in a very tiny portion of the overall
Okay,
ordinance.
All right. So you're clear on that,
I'm
Richard?
clear with that. Now he said per acre.
Yes, it does make a difference.
Now, the per acre, I'm assuming, already exists in the
It
ordinance.
does.
Yes.
All right, that's why it doesn't show here.
Right.
That's correct. That's correct.
And then number 6, workforce housing is in parentheses.
It just presently says, after the word multifamily, it says dwelling, and since we've changed those to be structure, we're changing it here to be structure so that we're not using 2 different terms within the ordinance.
Okay.
So you want this one to be a motion to take to ballot or to move forward to the 18th?
This one was noticed properly, so it can be
Go to the ballot.
a motion to go to ballot.
I'll make a motion it be moved forward to the ballot as written.
You're a good man.
Second.
Motion by Richard, second by Robin. Discussion?
Yeah, I just want people to understand my vote is gonna be because I don't support changing our ordinance to allow the large apartment buildings in town. So that's why I'm gonna be a no vote on it.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? One opposed, and abstentions. All right, so it's 4 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstentions. Motion carries. So that one is going to warrant.
Correct. So we will only have one public hearing on January 18th that has anything to do with zoning.
Oh, we're not done yet. We've still got ADU stuff and, yeah,
Oh, that's right, the gross living area, I'm sorry.
so we got one more to go.
Yeah. It's your different one, but for,
Yes.
The first one on the aquifer, the structure definition, that one's going to January 18 for public hearing continuance, okay. Multifamily is going to warrant. And the ADU, the accessory dwelling unit one, this is one we started discussing last meeting where there was discussion about how we calculate the area and whether it's on, gross living area or, what was the other?
Effective square footage.
Effective square footage. And I know we had a split vote on this, I believe, right? It was very close, it was.
Well, but we, so again, I'm confused because we voted whether or not to accept GLA or GLS.
Right,
Or no, or
No.
GL,
gross effect, no,
Or
effective
effective
square footage. So it would have been ESF.
and then we voted whether or not to put it on the ballot, right? So I think.
No, because we couldn't, that was a substantive change.
We essentially voted what we were going to propose to put on the
Exactly.
ballot, not actually, yeah.
Exactly.
Like, I thought we took 2 votes on that, but again, that's just.
but we
what's going on
can't,
in there.
because it came up that
My
meeting,
barometer's broken.
we can't make.
No, it's your knee that's the problem.
Yeah.
Right, we
That's
did
a public
make,
hearing.
we did go forward to make the change that there would be a graphic,
Right,
element required
Yep.
with each ADU.
right. That,
And that one we voted.
we moved
directly tax.
to go to warrant, we did that one. And then we got into the discussion about the calculation
But
of
this
area.
was language that didn't exist in that proposal.
Right.
And so we couldn't send that, we couldn't send the concept of gross living area that the majority of the board voted in favor of to town meeting vote because it hadn't been posted.
Right.
Got it.
Now it's been posted. Now you vote on it. If the vote changes, I can't predict that, but
You
this
want
vote would be to send it
questions
to
now or once it
town meeting vote.
gets proposed?
Well, let me just, let's get it out on the table.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the change is to Article 206, number E, or letter E. Letter, yeah, they are letters. And it's the section that reads, the size of the ADU, accessory dwelling unit, shall not be smaller than 600 square feet. The maximum size of the ADU shall not exceed 1/3 the size of the, and then the following wording is the change,
Correct.
which reads gross living area, also known as GLA, parentheses, heated or air-conditioned space, close parentheses, as defined in the town's tax card of the primary single-family dwelling, end quote. That whole thing is the proposed, that's new language.
That is new language.
And so the current practice though is using the other, you've been using the other.
I've been using the effective every time I've done the calculation.
Yeah, the net result is this will make ADUs smaller.
Not necessarily. That's where Robert and I've been playing with it for a week. Because if you're
okay.
using the gross living area on both, they stay about the same.
I see.
Because you may have an 800 square foot ADU, but you're only taking whatever's living space. So if you've got, closets or whatever, they're not living space.
Closets are.
It depends on
Depends on how
whether
you
you
build
heat
it.
it or not. They may
Depends on
not
how
be
you build
heated.
it according to that definition.
The issue Robert had with it is if we still need a minimum square footage on these. Because the state guidelines say you shouldn't have a minimum square footage, and we always have.
No, the state guidance, that's not what the state guidance says. The state law says you can't make units be less than 720 square feet. That's all it says. It says you cannot, because some towns were just saying they can't exceed 600 feet or whatever. And the state wanted to put a threshold that said you can't mandate that they be less than this amount. But you can have a formula that determines what the maximum size can be.
But it's still a minimum of 600 feet. If we have a really small house,
Yes.
our other part of our ordinance says they can put in up to 600 square
But
feet.
it also says
Okay.
that a house smaller than 1,200 square feet
Can't have one.
can't have an ADU because,
But now it's 1,200 feet of GLA.
which would
Yes,
not.
it is.
In fact, that would,
So, so that means it's probably a 1,500 or 1,600 square foot house that ends up with 1,200 GLA. That's what we were getting at, is where are you gonna do
Yes,
that
there's-
breakdown?
in every instance that I saw, I haven't looked at tax cards nearly as often as many other municipal employees have. Using the GLA makes the ADU smaller in size.
Well, the other thing we determined is there's only been 2 of these done. One was the Madison one that was done pre this ordinance, and then the one on Exeter Road. All the others have been attached. So hopefully we're not talking about a large number of them anyway.
Well, we have no way of
We
knowing.
have no way to know. I know.
I mean, if the housing market continues the way it is, I mean, we could end up being inundated with a lot of requests for these.
Right.
But, anyway,
We absolutely could.
all right, so what,
So that's the proposal as it stands, and that's what the board has to vote on.
so, any more discussion?
Well, I guess since I was pretty vocal about this last time, I feel compelled to say that for a couple reasons, I guess I'm conflicted because I feel like my thought is if you are taxed on the larger of the 2 assessments, that should be what the formula uses.
But you're taxed at a lower rate. You're not taxed at the full rate.
Regardless,
There's a
you're still
perc-
taxed
But there's a
on it.
percentage on, like a porch, a garage,
Right, on
a
areas that
basement.
are not heated and
But that doesn't mean that it shouldn't still go to ballot for other people to vote, for the town to vote on, right? Like, that's,
Well, I
those are
think-
2 different things, I guess, in my mind. How I feel about it is sort of, but, I shared that last time, but that wouldn't prevent me necessarily from supporting putting it on a ballot for the town to vote on. And if,
Well, that's your call, really. I mean, because if, you're here to be voting your feelings on things.
This is one of the few times where we actually get to use just our
Right.
opinion if we want, and
Right.
because, like I said, like on the other one, while I may not be in support of creating a new rule that allows apartment buildings, if the townspeople do end up deciding to vote it in, I'll always vote for what's legally allowed in zoning through what the
Right.
town's voted in, even though I may not like it. But this is one of the few times where we actually get to inject our opinion into
Right.
what's going forward, because, and I know one of the things I've talked about in the past is I've always frustrated that on zoning articles it doesn't show the actual roll call vote of the board, because it just says whether or not it was supported or not, doesn't show that it was 5-3 or unanimous.
right, the language says as proposed by the planning board. That's what goes on there.
Correct. But for those that do look further into it, I guess they could check the meeting minutes and find out what if it was a split board.
and quite frankly, our opinion is, that we're requesting this from most people, looking at GLA versus ESF and whatever is completely meaningless. It's gonna take a very interested person to look that up ahead of time and say, what does this mean for me, frankly? And making this, if I'm gonna make an ADU at my house, and I've got an X number of square feet house, I, probably not vote in favor of changing the formula, the calculation.
Yeah.
well,
other
and
thing about
historically,
this-
you've always used the other calculation.
I have.
Effective.
Yeah, I mean, I can say I'm in favor of the larger number because of the fact that you are being taxed on it. I understand it's a lower rate, but whether it's a lower rate or not, you're still being taxed on that square footage. Like it drives me bonkers that I have to pay more taxes if I put in hardwood floors instead of contractor grade carpeting. So if you invest in your home, you're going to pay a tax rate. But
So that's how it
in this
works.
situation, I would rather benefit the homeowner who is being taxed on that space to make it more allowable.
The other issue from an enforcement issue is when you get into GLA, you're gonna have arguments over legal GLA or unlegal GLA. People who have finished their basement without permits are now considering that GLA.
Well, they may, and
On
it
the
may be
property.
an opportunity, it may be an opportunity for them.
This language says as defined by the tax card.
Correct.
That's right.
So it may be a motivating factor for them to bring it into compliance and be recorded as legal if they want to use those calculations
That's
for
right.
something else.
I mean, we catch a lot of work done without permits from real estate listings.
Right.
Yeah.
So Robin, to go back to your question and to your personal dilemma, you certainly can vote your feelings on this, your personal feelings. However, you can also, if you feel that, this really ought to be on the ballot for voters to decide, you can vote that way too. I mean, it's really up to you.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, presumably, we could have gone the other way and said that we basically wanted to define what's used, because as Len had pointed out, other towns and realtors tend to use the GLA, and my personal philosophy is we're going to try to align this with a legally defendable definition, and align it with the way other towns work. So that's the only reason I'm going for it. Otherwise, I would have said just keep the standard the way it was. But if we're not in sync with the state and rest of other towns in the area, then it's a bit confusing.
And Robert says he's always used GLA when he figures them,
Yeah.
when he checks them. He's always done it that way.
Yeah,
So we're not really making a change.
And I understand your dilemma too, from the wanting to bring it to the voters, and in an ideal world, if everyone actually read and educated them. But I can tell you, the majority of people I talk to, especially when it comes to zoning articles, they all say, "Yeah, those are too long. I didn't even bother reading them. I either skipped them or I just asked somebody else how I'm supposed to vote on them." So, with my personal opinion on that, that's why I'm like, I'm going to vote no on it, because I don't even want to propose it to be out there, because a lot of times people find the zoning articles confusing and they may vote in the opposite of their intention because they didn't fully understand it.
And if you work in the election, you'd know it's even truer because people vote quicker than they could read the people that are running.
Yeah. People all the time, they're like, "Oh, I just got texted my list of things I'm supposed to vote for."
Well, I mean, hopefully with shorter ballots and shorter descriptions, maybe it'll be a little different. Who knows?
But to your point, I mean, I think unless you go back and read the meeting minutes or watch the hearing, you're not going to know that you're voting really between two things as opposed to just adopting language.
So is somebody prepared to make a motion to either move this to warrant or not?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that this be moved to warrant for the reasons I stated.
Is there a second? I'll second it. So motion by Peter, second by Glenn. Discussion further?
Wait a minute, don't vote yet. I'm torn on this one.
Yeah, I know, it's a tough one, but
Well,
I think go with Robert.
I mean, I could argue in favor of it just for consistency's sake, because if you're telling me that Robert uses
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
GLA, then, oh my God, we ought, at the very least, we ought to be consistent.
Yeah. And we can change it later if that turns out to be unworkable. We can go to another formula, but if to be using different formulas and not having an answer to people who come in to Susan or Tori and say, how do I figure this out?
Lynn?
What I don't want you to do is abstain, because
No, I know, it'd be a tie.
then we go
I've
nowhere.
already counted, Glenn.
Then we go nowhere, so.
I think that's why he was hesitant to even second it for the vote.
If I can, you're still under discussion.
Oh, yes, we are.
In a phone conversation yesterday with Lynn, she said to me, well, I'm not gonna be able to be there to vote. And she said, I don't feel like I adequately described what the use is of effective square footage. And she said it is really simply a taxation methodology, and that that the square footages are looked at very differently under the realm of the tax assessment process. Which is what Richard was mentioning earlier, but she did say that to me, and I did tell her I would say it at the public hearing, so I wanted to make sure that
I'm sure she appreciated that, and thank you for carrying that to us.
But it also kind of goes back to what Chris says, is that, you know, if you better your house and gain from it, I don't know, I just feel like people should be able to. I mean, I just went to a 1,800 square foot place and I feel like I'm living in a closet, so I can picture this 700 square foot or 600 square foot.
I know my only guidance when I think about this is that the purpose of the ADU is the creation of an accessory dwelling unit. And that unit is a certain space. And I wouldn't calculate against them if they were showing a deck on an accessory dwelling unit. That wouldn't be counted as
Right.
space for
And that's why
determining the size of the dwelling, the ADU.
Yeah, when we pulled
So
examples, we
removing that
did
from
that.
the equation seems to me logical, even though it wasn't the way I looked at it originally. I did it improperly because I just really wasn't cognizant of the difference between the two standards.
But does it even say in the existing thing what to use?
No, it doesn't at all.
Yeah, that's my issue.
It doesn't at all.
Is it now?
So I mean,
Make it
this,
different.
this at least clarifies
Standardizes.
what a person's expectation should be for the size of their unit.
Okay, I'm ready to vote.
Okay.
All right. Does anybody wish to discuss it further, now that we have Richard on board with some vote?
I was going to.
He's looking at the enforcement side.
I was going to, yeah, I am. You're right.
All right, so the motion is to move it to warrant.
Warrant.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And abstentions. All right, so motion carries, 3 in favor, 2 opposed, no abstentions.
Okay. You may want to tell Ellen who the no's are for as she does the minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
Sorry, I
She could
just
watch,
thought
she'll probably watch the
Yeah.
tape, but, in favor on that one were Peter, Richard and Glenn, and opposed Robin and Chris. And the other one where we had,
I was a no.
you were a no on the multifamily.
Yeah, definition of
Yeah,
multifamily.
yep,
buildings.
okay. All right, so ADUs goes to warrant.
But I can articulate why.
Okay, Glenn, I don't have any others except for the petition warrant articles, am I correct?
You are correct, sir.
Okay.
And there are 2 of them.
And there are 2 of them, and I believe Glenn passed out copies to everyone.
I did. Everybody should have each of them. It's just the front page of each of them.
Right,
All
which
signatures.
has the wording.
But they both have enough.
But each of them had the proper amount of registered voters
And they have been checked.
signing the petition.
Okay, they've been through the selectman's office and they've been checked, so they have enough valid signatures and
And they were in
and
on
just,
time.
I'm sorry?
They were in on time.
They were in on time. And so just to remind everyone, the planning board's role here is to hold a public hearing on these, to take public comment, to discuss them, and then per
To allow.
Per RSA 675:4, these will go on the ballot. We can't, this hearing cannot change any of the wording.
Yep.
They have to go on the ballot as is.
Correct.
The only thing that goes along with it is a recommendation from this board. And the wording by the RSA is either approval or disapproval of, it's not recommend or whatever.
No
You got it?
I had my book out to tell you that, but instead you told me.
I even highlighted it because I looked it up today. I said, know.
Is it recommend to approve or
No,
recommend?
no,
It's
it's
just
to-
not recommend at all.
It's 675:4, Roman numeral 3. Each petitioned amendment shall be placed on a ballot, which may be separate from the ballot used to elect town or village district officers. A notation on the ballot stating the planning board's approval or disapproval shall immediately follow the question's description.
And Glenn, I'm assuming you've checked these to make sure that they're legal and what they say.
Well, that's not my responsibility.
That's not our responsibility.
That's actually the
So-
city.
In
That-
fact,
that's-
So even if it was like considered spot zoning, you can't say so?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
it could be challenged after the fact, if it
Okay.
passed, and could be nullified if it was.
Well, because I think the bigger issue is when you get the spot zoning is if it's proposed by the boards. Well, I don't know, can individual,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
it's voted on,
it-
if it's a petitioned amendment, you can't end up declaring it spot zoning after the fact anyway.
Well, I think,
Yeah, you can.
I think you could.
I think somebody can challenge it, because it is zoning.
And a butter can make that challenge.
Oh,
But
sure.
in this case, the one that appears like it would be spot zoning doesn't qualify as spot zoning because it's being added to a zone.
It's not like being
Okay.
isolated.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not all that
So we're
simple.
getting this discussion of each one, so.
All right, well, since we've started talking about that one, let's do that one. So the question on this one is, to see if the town will amend zoning articles 103.1 and 104.1 as follows. 103.1, in the following sentence in the single-family residential district, remove lot 10. And then it has parentheses and bolded type that says, to eliminate, this is the description, I
That's
guess.
that's the existing language.
To eliminate lots with 2 or more zoning designations, the following lots are entirely zoned single-family residential, tax map R19, 1, 2, 4, 5, 10,
10 marked out.
10 marked out.
Well, because.
Oh,
That's the one that.
removing lot 10.
That is
Got
the
it.
one that's being removed.
Got
That's
it.
the proposed change.
Got it. And then 104.1, rural residential district, add tax map R19 lot 10 to the following sentence and associated lists of properties. And that reads, to eliminate confusion, the following lots that were split between zones are now entirely zoned rural residential. And it lists a whole bunch of tax maps, U8, 12, tax map U10, 35, tax map R9, 1-4, 1-5, 1-6, 80, tax map R13:6, tax map R22:8, 39, tax map R25:1-2, tax map R30:40B, 40C, 40D, and tax map R32:1-10, 2, 8, tax map R33:21, 30, and tax map R19-10. So presumably,
That one doesn't
Adding.
exist right now. That's the
Yeah,
one.
adding that
that's
last one.
adding
That's
that
on the
one to
That's
that
being
list.
added to rural residential.
So removing it from 104-1 and adding it to, I'm sorry, removing it from 103-1
Correct,
to putting it into 104.1.
correct.
So we're assuming that all those lots, the lines going through somewhere through the middle of them. I thought we did this years
Yeah, no,
ago. You and I
that's,
went
that's
through.
exactly what happened, is that that was a lot that was split.
I know.
The line, and it was moved, the line was moved over, so it became SF, single-family residential. What he wants to do is move the line back over the other way.
But he's moving a lot of others.
No.
No, those are already on the
Those are
list.
already there.
All he's doing is
Ten-
showing
ten's the only one
what
changing.
presently exists in the ordinance.
Okay,
The only
So
change.
talk about
in the first
confusion when you read
paragraph-
this.
Well, yeah, when I first read it, I'm like, whoa, all these lots changing?
No.
And yeah, until I,
What exists here is predominantly the existing language in each district. Just one lot is changed, is removed from one, and that same lot is added to the other.
So what this basically means is that he wouldn't have to go, or that lot wouldn't have to go to the ZBA every time they want to put a business in it.
That's correct.
Correct.
Or you can have roosters.
But it means that that business would be adjacent to a single-family
Residential district.
residential
So
district.
the town of Hampshire.
Which we have in lots of places in town. We have tons
I'm in
of,
rural residential.
we have tons of rural residential properties that abut single-family residentially district properties.
And.
But they're not necessarily designed for a business, which this is.
Well, this one's had a business for a long time.
Yeah,
For a very long time.
I mean, and even before it was a business, it was a
church.
church, so it had a lot of activity.
Yeah.
Yes, a lot of non-residential
Yes,
activity.
correct. Yes, a lot of non-residential activity.
Now you said, whatever you said, so there's no,
So
So
we.
it's just a motion to approve or a motion to disapprove?
It's,
no abstentions.
it's a motion to approve. Don't abstain. It's a motion to either approve or disapprove this petition warrant article.
Correct.
And that's gets
And
reflected
that,
on the ballot.
and
And
that
that's shown on the
recommendation will
ballot.
appear on the ballot below the description.
So moved.
You're gonna get your wish.
No, you have to say one or the other.
Oh, approve. I make a motion to approve.
Motion by
Planning board
Chris.
on this petition
Motion
warrant
by Chris to approve of this warrant, of this petition warrant article, changing this lot from single family to rural residential.
Second.
Second by Robin. Discussion. Richard, speaking from the select board's perspective, I mean, is this something
No, I mean,
that you feel comfortable with? Is
yeah,
it?
I mean, I understand why it's being done, and it would have been nice if it had been done 15 years ago.
Okay.
Um,
I guess what I'm asking is there, from the selectmen's perspective, is there any reason that we shouldn't be doing this?
I don't think so.
Glenn?
I agree. I think that having it be in the single-family residential district, with its history being not single-family,
Yes,
is counterintuitive. Now, the fact that the present owner wants to make it single-family seems in opposition to what his proposal is, but he's keeping his opportunities
So,
open, and they're more open if he makes it rural residential.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, and once again, from the time that I first said it, we have not been joined by any public, unless Adam has any comments on this. And I'm not seeing his hand raised, so, okay. All right, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? And that's unanimous. Okay. The second petition warrant article, the summary is to remove the rooster restriction within single-family residences. And the specific text for the wording is to add the word agriculture and farming per definition B1, B2, and B3 listed under section Article Preamble 2 definitions to all residential zones that currently do not have it listed as a purpose, including but not limited to single-family residential, and to strike from record under single-family residential, section 103.2, the raising of chickens and the sale of eggs in association with a conforming single-family residence are permitted activities, but no roosters are allowed in the district.
So this is two things.
Right, because that language that you just said is current law.
Right.
And so this would do two things. Although it says including but not limited to, the only district where agriculture is not an allowed use is single-family residential. We made the change in previous town meetings to add it as a use in the other residentially zoned areas.
I mean, there are agricultural activities that can happen in single family, like tilling of soil and stuff like that, which the state RSAs permit.
and so part of the reason I support this is because when this was passed at the town meeting, I had numerous people in the town come up to me afterwards, and this was one of those articles that the wording of it was very confusing. And they thought by not voting for it, they didn't realize that by right it was allowed in all districts at the time. And they thought by not voting this in that it would prohibit it from being done in any district. So a lot of people voted for it. They said, well, at least it'll only be restricted in that one thing, but we don't want to ban it in the rest of the town. So I had numerous people saying it was very confusing of the word when it went to the last warrant, and they didn't realize that all it did was create the prohibition in that one district. And for me personally, it's like, so my home's on, kind of like that last article, like mine's in single family residential, my neighbors were all residential, but if you look at our two properties, you're not gonna say they're very materially different. Why is one allowed access to this and one is not? I have a tough time with the fact that Kingston was the chicken capital of the world at one time, and this town was founded on poultry and really had a strong heritage and history. And with the huge movement, and especially right now with everything we're going through, there's so much more of a movement towards sustainable living, whether it's providing eggs, poultry, meat, gardening for yourselves. I think anything we can do to enable people to be a part of that is good. And I get it, roosters can be a burden, but they are important for those that free range their chickens to protect the flocks and provide if they want to breed and stuff like that. So they have that ability, and the nuisance of it is so limited in scope that there are so many other things that are absolutely allowed that are far more annoying than a rooster. If somebody really wanted to, cause a ruckus, they could get a peacock or a guinea fowl, which doesn't fall into that prohibition. And I can tell you that would be much more obnoxious than a rooster.
Or a barking dog.
Or a barking dog.
And which brings us back to why that was put in. It was a compromise between not allowing any of these noises. And we figured out what the source of the problem was.
Peter, stop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we had a person who was trying to sleep, a nurse who was trying to sleep in a single-family residential. They bought into a single-family residential. This is primarily, we're talking about developments. That's most of what SFR is. And where density is very tight, and people who had roosters adjacent were preventing that person from being able to sleep. And so I guess we thought about creating noise ordinances, and we looked at a whole bunch of different places. Of course, that's very restrictive ones. We came with a compromise of okay, we'll deal with a specific problem. Roosters are noisy at all hours of the day, and and they're constant, fairly constant. We used to have them, we're residential, we don't now. So that was the solution, and the barking dog incident thing came up, and there are regulations about what constitutes a nuisance for a dog, and you can do something about it. But when your neighbor has a rooster, there wasn't as much you could do about it because there weren't any rooster ordinances.
It's not much you can do about a dog if you read the ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my thing is just
Listen,
being bad neighbors, it's neighbor disputes are something that are never going away. They're going to continue, but I've never found it okay to bypass the provisions that are in place to solve one problem if it restricts freedoms and abilities for other people who are not even associated with that dispute. So it was essentially it ends up being a blanket punishment or restriction on numerous people who are not associated with the problem. So it doesn't really fix the problem, and then because of the way that, granted eventually a rooster will pass away, but all the ones that were in existence are grandfathered.
And that's a very hard thing to enforce too.
Yeah,
It's
are
only the
you doing
person that
DNA? Are you
get on
doing
the rooster.
DNA testing or radio chip
Yeah.
ID of those chickens?
So I just, technically, a concern I have is that if you strike So if this hits the ballot as written, which I know we can't change, but if you strike the raising of chickens and the sale of eggs in association with conforming single-family residents or permitted activities, but no roosters are allowed in the district, what are you replacing it with?
You're adding into that definition for that zone that farming and agriculture are allowed. Chicken raising is allowed as a farming.
Gotcha.
And
So
it's
that
still gonna be
you don't
confusing.
have to revert to the previous language, you can just, okay.
But
And there are still people that are gonna be confused by this language, because they're gonna think it's,
For one thing, it's gonna start saying anything that's agricultural or farming, pig farming is now gonna be allowed in single-family residential. That is what this ordinance says. And that is why I would vote no on this one because, or vote to disapprove, because there are restrictions in single-family residential. We bought rural residential because we wanted to have horses at the time and chickens and whatever. And so we specifically only selected properties that were rural residential. That's part of what people look for when they buy into single-family residential. They want to not have a factory next door. They want to not have a pig farm next door if it doesn't exist already.
but what about the people that bought it when it was allowed and then they were suddenly not allowed to?
Pig farms?
No,
And
but
roosters. Single-family residential?
So, and I guess
I think
I'm
there's
struggling with
question-
that, this seems like it's,
This
we're
is,
going
this is
from,
broader than roosters.
yeah,
Yeah.
if the goal was really just to revert back to what the existing language was prior to the
Yeah.
passing of the rooster ban,
Yeah.
then that's what this should read as, but it
It
doesn't.
should.
The
should
wording on
delete.
this is poor.
Yeah, it's terribly poor. Basically, what they're saying is, there's,
It's game
you're taking
on.
away single-family residential as a district. That's what this does.
Correct, I would say this is gonna be confusing again, because, and I think it's because the first language adopting it was poor. So they're just trying, their intention
Okay.
was to just remove the language that they thought prohibited it.
Right,
Well,
but
that's what
what they
she's
did
saying.
is they went beyond that. Instead of just deleting that, they've added all farming and agriculture to single-family residential. Are you prepared to deal with
Well,
that?
I think, wait a minute, so,
Yes, but read the.
That's exactly what it will do.
no, but right now,
Add the word
what,
agriculture
other
and
than
farming.
roosters, what prohibits it right now?
What prohibits it
Single-family
is
zone says-
the thing we added.
Describes what you can do in single family.
The
But
bottom part.
does it say other agricultural and farming activities are prohibited?
It says, in single-family residential district, the use of the land is limited to single-family dwellings and incidental uses such as private garages, boathouses, tool sheds, gardens, and the like. And then there's the language, the raising of chickens and the sale of eggs in association
So
with conforming.
currently, right now, there's nothing that prevents you from agriculture and other farming activities. That's why, I could have,
No, that's
I
not
could,
No,
true.
that's not true.
We have a permissive zoning ordinance. If your permitted uses
Right.
do not say it's allowed, then it is expressly prohibited.
but agricultural uses are permitted by right under state RSA.
Only certain ones. Not
Tilling the
all.
soil, that's it.
Tilling
No,
of the soil
tilling of
is the
soil.
only exclusively permitted agricultural use.
Yes.
And then communities are allowed to either incorporate the state's definition of agriculture and designate which zones they would.
See, I thought that
That's why we
that
have to-
tillage of soil was the only one the towns cannot prevent, but it's by right unless prohibitly
No.
expressly,
No, not at all.
like, not
No, we
allowed.
do.
Not at all.
That's-
The
that-
only
that's-
expressly allowed agricultural use on every land in the state of New Hampshire is the tillage of soil.
Right.
That's the only, and Chris, I have been advocating for agricultural uses in towns for years. I think that agricultural uses are just about as natural a use as possible in New Hampshire. And then I'll tell you, I lived next to a rooster for 8 miserable years.
Well,
Miserable years. They were horrifying. And I love my neighbor, and she has had chickens the entire 30 years with the neighbors. She only had a rooster for 8 of them. And it's a drastically different living environment. Drastically. And when you said earlier it's not that big a thing, it seems to me you haven't lived next to one.
I have, but I had good neighbor relations where I said, hey, your rooster's coming jumping on the fence right outside of my window every morning. Could we do something about it? And he said, yep, taken care of the next day.
How did you take care of it?
Circle of life.
Separation.
It became dinner.
I like the guy on Facebook that said he was gonna start removing vocal cords from roosters.
Good time. Good
Because
time.
it is incredibly intrusive. Incredibly intrusive.
Well, I've said all along that I couldn't care less whether there are roosters or aren't roosters, that I just wanna know which way to enforce. And I think that we've sent us the people with some PR work that they know what they're voting for, and let the people decide.
But I don't think this is any clearer. I mean, if the goal was to be more transparent and simply revert back to what the previous language was, that's not what this
But
is.
Well, that's not what they wanted to
Exactly.
do at all. That's not what they wanted. The
And
people that did this.
you know, I think to Peter's point, would then differentiate single family from rural residential.
And we have a single family agricultural district. And, basically, you're now changing all of our, you would be, if this passed, you would change all of our single family residential to single family residential agricultural. And it wouldn't matter if a farm existed or not, if it was in a subdivision or not, unless there were some, bylaws. You can now, you'd be able to have a pig farm next door to you. Between a pig farm and an oxen farm, you know, I don't know, whatever, it's just ridiculous. I see absolutely no reason why the planning board would ever vote to approve this.
And there was a time, going back to Chris, one of your earlier comments, you know, there was a time, Kingston is on the map in many respects, not only for carriages, but for chickens. And I mean, that's when we were an agrarian society. I mean, it was a whole different kind of a world then. I mean, we didn't have subdivisions and single-family residential where houses, we had a village area where houses were sort of close together.
Well, if you haven't been to the grocery store lately, you may want to have that food supply readily available pretty soon.
Well, that's true, that's true. But
Well, you can have a
But
food
what you
supply.
have-
without-
I'm just saying, it's a different world now, and,
But we had the big chicken farms like the ones you're talking about, down where Summer had off of Hunt Road, on the north side of Hunt Road. There were
Rock
massive
There were
chicken.
21 chicken farms
Rock
in
Rimmon.
Kingston at one time, and
And
when
they're
the
now,
stagecoach came through here from Portsmouth to Boston, there were only 3 more bars in town at the time. So you would go to the bar and eat chicken, get off the stagecoach, that's fact.
yeah.
yeah. But those have been converted to subdivisions.
My attitude about this was changed by that nurse who said to me she felt betrayed that buying into a single-family residential zone didn't protect her from those kind of activities.
But
she
they-
thought because she said, we looked at a house in the rural residential district, and we looked at what the zoning ordinance said. And the zoning ordinance at that time had just been changed to allow small commercial activities,
But-
up to 1,500
The
square
problem is
feet.
the roosters aren't the issue in this. The issue is that they're changing single family to agriculture.
Right.
That's the issue that I have a problem with, not the roosters.
I mean, it
Well-
expands
Well,
beyond.
there were two issues there.
If you think roosters were an issue,
Pers-
you may really have a problem with
Right,
swine.
that's my point, is that they've written this poorly.
No, they've written this just what they want.
Well,
No, I don't think the intention was to, I don't think their intention was to,
Why they add that?
Oh, I'm sure it was. They had to actively look and see that the only zone we have in town now that doesn't have agricultural use is the single-family zone.
Because if all they wanted to do was roosters, all they had to do was take
Leave
that one
Remove
language
the one line
that talks.
that prohibits them.
but I think they went back to the history to see that at the time this was done, it specifically added agriculture and farming to those other districts with this. So they thought by swapping all the language at the same time as when it was implemented was the
but
right
that's
course
not
of
what it
action.
did.
I'm not disagreeing. That's not what it did. But to your other point, when she felt betrayed about buying into a single-family residential, I felt that by buying a home in a single-family residential, specifically not in an HOA or the historic district, I was preserving my rights to do things on my property.
But did you read the ordinance?
But when did she
No.
buy? Because when she bought the single family residence, or in the single family residential zone, at that time, roosters were permitted, correct?
No. We added
The
roosters.
single-family district has never said agriculture was allowed use.
People
We
were
added,
just-
no.
People were just getting
We added the
chickens.
chickens recently because of all the activity and the interest in chickens.
Right, a lot of people wanted chickens, got chickens.
All
we
it
added
used to
that.
say was what I read originally.
I thought
We-
it didn't say the raising of chickens and the sale of
No,
eggs.
that came about in,
A couple of years ago?
2019.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before
And
2019,
that-
it stopped at "and the like."
Right.
So
And that
you
was,
could- So you could have incidental uses such as private garages, boathouses, tool sheds, gardens, and the like.
Gotcha.
it was specifically in response to the general interest, the big interest across the country about raising backyard chickens.
And we wanted to let people get chickens, but without getting goats, zebras, and everything else. And that wouldn't be appropriate for a single-family residential. And that is when the whole issue was the roosters came up. So. Just,
All right, how much more would you like to talk about this?
None. What you say
somebody-
the wording is, support or not support?
yeah. I'm gonna
Approve or disapprove?
I'll make a motion to disapprove this article as written.
I'll second that.
All right, motion by Richard, second by Peter to disapprove of this citizens petition regarding agriculture. Further discussion?
Yes, my comment will be that I'm not anti-roosters, I'm anti the way this is written, with the agriculture added to single-family housing.
Same.
All right. Anything further? Call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so 4 in favor. Chris is opposed, so 1 opposed and no abstentions. So motion carries. So the wording that will follow this on the ballot will be that the planning board disapproves of this article,
Now,
of this proposed change.
they can change this town meeting if they have all the signatures to do that, correct? We've ran into that before.
I don't believe so.
No, town meeting, you can't make
Town
some.
That's a question for
The moderator.
I think it's been done, that there was some article 4 or 5 years ago that they had to go back and get every signature. Actually, no, that's
No.
I don't
wrong.
think
No,
how
no.
you
They rewrote theirs to where the people writing the article could make modifications on the town floor, that's what it was. All right,
That's different.
that's right,
That's
forget
different.
that, okay. I was just thinking if they wanted to change it a little bit, that,
Because by the time town meeting vote happens,
yeah.
this language would require a new posting, and there's no time to do that, so it has to be this or not.
Okay. So that is the extent of our public hearings for tonight. We have, I don't have any correspondence in front of me because the folder was not prepared and Glenn doesn't think we have anything critical anyway, so.
Not that I've been made privy of.
There have been a number of invoices that have been coming to me, particularly right at the end of the year, for some work by Dennis, some of Glenn's invoices. So I have been approving them by email as the chair of this board, so, but there's been there's money in escrow to pay for all of them. I mean, there's nothing being done underhanded here, so just so you guys know. Normally, we would run them through us here, but we've been doing it that way for now.
I have one thing,
And,
if you're getting right in.
Okay, do you want to deal with the December minutes, or would you rather table them till we have a full board?
I'm prepared to move to accept this December 7th minutes.
All right.
As written.
All right.
December
Second.
14th, had some changes.
All right, motion by Peter, second by Robin, to accept the minutes of December 7 as written. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So that's unanimous, thank you. And, okay, Richard, go ahead.
I think it was last meeting, we had a thing from Mark Vines for an inspection station at his excavating place, and we turned it down, based on lack of information. He wants that for his fleet and personal use only, not open to the public. And I wanna just make sure that's okay with this board before the selectmen decide to sign it.
Can you do
Is-
that?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got enough of a fleet that the state will let him do that.
Yeah. Then the question is, does the state provide for different types of inspections where it's non-commercial? Because once you get the inspection station permit, you can put the little plaque out and you can start.
Not if we don't open it, let him open it to the public. That's what
Yeah,
we're
that's-
restricted.
Yeah, so that's my question.
And I'm not sure, isn't that, don't they limit the amount you can get under like a personal, like fleet thing too? They might limit the amount
Well, that's what I'm
of
asking.
stickers you have access
I think
to.
that they
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Does he have like 10 trucks or something?
Yeah, but I think they may not let you go like above 25 or
Right.
50, whatever, so it would be impractical for him to even try if he's limited under that license, but
I think
I
you
don't know if
have
that's.
to, I think he would have to prove ownership of the thing for it to be part
Yeah.
of his fleet.
Yeah,
So that Robin couldn't come in and.
correct.
make it
Well, I told
part
him,
of it.
we expected a letter from him stating that he was restricting it to his own fleet and personal use. And I had told him to add the personal use so he could do his personal cars. And
Well, then that should be a notation on the application, so that at least it's somewhere in the record when it goes back to the state.
okay, I can put that on there.
So the question is, Richard was talking to me about this before the meeting, because we had denied it and sent it back. Because remember they, on the new application, there used to be a pending category and they eliminated it. So we either had to approve it
Yeah,
or not.
we couldn't postpone it, yeah.
So we denied and sent it back to the select board. Now, does it need to come back here to us?
Well, I thought that's what I was just doing.
Yeah.
Oh,
We need a formal vote to say we approve it with the
Yeah.
stipulations that it be approved.
all right.
Is that a motion?
So is that a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the inspection certificate application, provided that it is documented that it is for his fleet and personal use only.
Second.
Okay. So motion by Peter, second by Robin to approve of the inspection station application for Mr. Vines with the provision that it's for his fleet and personal use only. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That's unanimous. Anything else? Glenn?
I have nothing else for you.
All right, then, I'm gonna call us adjourned at 7:51 PM. Thank you all, we'll see you on the 18th, we got a full agenda, so be prepared.
And the
Adam?